The process of turning a log into lumber begins with shaving off all of the live edge sides until you have a square billet to cut the dimensional lumber from. That leaves quite a few slabs that have a live edge, and I've used those to create the siding that I will use for the cabin. Welcome back to Boneset Ranch. This little building is not really different than your average garden shed, just maybe a little bit bigger, and it's being built on a very stable rock base. So I've chosen not to do a traditional foundation. So the metal flashing you see me adding here isn't necessarily standard construction, but it helps to bring all the water down to the rock base and also keep the vermin out from underneath the cabin. From here up is the undersiding weather barrier. This will be the last defense against water and air infiltration after the siding. In a previous video you had seen where I had installed the weather barrier and the flashing around the upper windows before I stood up the wall. And here you can see that I'm finishing the job of bringing the lower weather barrier up to the point where I had the pre-installed weather barrier. And of course I'd left it loose so that I could install the lower barrier underneath the upper pre-installed barrier so that it shingles down and allows any water that runs along the weather barrier to stay on the outside as it goes over the shingle laps rather than falling in between cracks. Something you can't really see here is that when I stapled down a line, it was along the line of the nails of the sheathing where I had nailed the sheathing into the studs. So by stapling along the same line and then eventually applying the vapor barrier tape over that line of staples, I kept a visual record of where the studs were for when I applied the siding later. Ta-da! This sketchiness is what convinced me to bring down some scaffolding that I had for doing the siding when I would be working with heavy long boards. I've been kind of making design decisions on the fly as I keep moving from one part of the construction to another. And one of the major decisions I came up with was that it would be a fun use of all of the rocks that are on this lower part of the property to become a base for the cabin. So I've added some building paper and I will add a mortared rock base to the overall exterior look. Part of what's holding up the paper in the meantime will be the masonry clips that will be bent out to help hold the rocks in place to the cabin. I'll build the rocks up to the bottom side of this flashing. It'll create a place for the rain running off the wood siding to get out over the top of the rocks and then cascade down the face of the rocks, as opposed to working its way between the rocks and the building paper when it's installed. It was quite a challenge to bring together the two different runs of siding with different widths and shape at the corners. And the result wasn't picture perfect, but it does fine for this remote cabin look. For consistency, I cut one of the live edges off in a straight line so that I could level each board up and then as the next board laid against that edge, it had a nice even surface to angle out over, instead of being bumpy and wavy and forcing me to adapt how the laps came together. These two sides of the cabin have a steep little embankment that made it hard to have a stable place to work from. I started out using extra pallets for a good place to stand and use a ladder from. But I needed my old scaffolding to work back and forth on the tallest reaches. After completing one side, it was a task to disassemble everything and reassemble it on the next side, so I had another stable base to work from. And feet 6. For the biggest cracks in the board, I would first apply a liberal amount of caulk over the crack on the back, and then add some metal flashing over that and secure it with staples. That would prevent anything that gets through the crack from going to the back side of the board. On the front side, I'd caulk again, but this time I would add sawdust over the caulk and press the sawdust into the caulk. So, my theory is the sawdust will dry inside the caulk and age with the rest of the board. Okay, it's lining up pretty good. the siding is complete. The next thing to do on the exterior is to work with the flashing here and bring a porch out away from the front. That porch will be about 10 feet by 10 feet and cover the front portion of the cabin and give us some outdoor space. But the siding has been added. Another next step on the exterior is to mortar in rocks as a base, where you see the black paper. Here you see the finished siding. And again, there will be a roof that comes off of the front here and creates a outdoor space. Here's the siding from another angle. But the next job will be on the interior. I want to finish up the interior to finish this out. I also need to cut down this tree. It isn't in great shape. You can see here that there's hollow spots all along here, and so I need to cut this tree down so that it's not there as a danger. And after it's cut down, that's when I'll build the porch. So the porch will be a gabled roof that comes off in this direction and lands out here. And then I'll have a 10 by 10 extra exterior living space added on to the main cabin out in the woods. Well, there's forecast for rain for the next week at least, if not more. So with the Pineapple Express coming in, I've buttoned up the cabin and it's time to take a break from the project and get back to it again after the rains. The road into the cabin just gets too muddy to be able to come down during the rain, and it takes about a week or two to let it go ahead and dry out some. So even if we get a week's worth of rain, I'll probably won't be back down here for another 2 weeks. Thanks for watching. Okay, here's the Pineapple Express.